Hello everyone and welcome to another SEJ Marketing Think Tank webinar. Today we're going to talk about a really fun topic. We're going to talk about how any company out there can use Snapchat and have success, essentially, right? Snapchat's one of those really fun topics, and so I'm kind of really excited to hear, how you can use it for your company. I think that's been one of the big questions that people have out there is how do I use Snapchat for myself? Well, if you're questioning that, you're in the right spot. We're going to do a whole presentation today with Kelsey Jones, who is the executive editor at Search Engine Journal. She also has a couple of her own companies and projects, and she does a lot of different work and a lot of different consulting and a lot of different speaking. So right now I'm just going to kind of give it over to her and let her give a little introduction for herself, and then when she gives it back to me, I'll go through some housekeeping points and stuff like that. Just last comment, my name is Brent Satoris, and I will be moderating, if you want to call it that, but for now I'll give you to Kelsey so she can introduce herself. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Thanks, Brent, and hi everyone. I'm so glad you guys are here. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. I have a Halloween shirt on. Paulo, our great designer, designed my Halloween presentation, so thanks to him. So a little bit more about me. I've been at SEJ since 2013. I've been in marketing and journalism since 2005, and I actually wrote the complete guide to Snapchat marketing, which is on Amazon, and I'm going to give everyone a free copy of that, and I'll tell you how to get that at the end of the presentation. And I've worked with a lot of big brands, a lot of small brands, Salesforce, Intuit, Haywire, and a ton of small businesses in between. And I do content strategy, social media, branded news content for clients through Moxie.dot and StoryShout. So that's what I do on the side when I am not doing SEJ stuff. So before I turn it back over to Brent for his housekeeping, I just want to give a shout out to SEJ Summit, which is our last conference of the year. It's happening in New York, November 2nd. You can use the code SEJNYC for 10% off. I'll be there doing social media, so I'd love to see you guys there. So Brent, back to you.
Perfect. And I really like, I'm obviously involved in SEJ Summit, but I mean, the SEJ Summit premise kind of comes on some early conferences that me and Lauren were involved with very, very early, and we really enjoyed kind of the feeling of being close to people, right? It's like, you have a small number of people, the speakers are in the same area, you get to kind of mingle, you really get a chance to almost bond in a way. You're forced to, you're kind of there eating, drinking, networking, and it gives you the opportunity to really follow up with people later. And so that's what our kind of premise around these events has been, and really trying to drive good speakers and more than anything, that opportunity to network. So, I really do personally enjoy these events a lot and look forward to them myself. Housekeeping stuff. Basic things, for me, maybe not for you, so I'll run through them. Throughout the entire presentation, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you really want to discuss that's appropriate, we're going to be using the hashtag SEJThinkTank. As one word, SEJ Think Tank. We'll utilize that in Twitter for the most part, and also if you have any questions, you can always put them in the question box within the actual webinar system. Throughout the presentation, we'll have a number of polls, which we will stop and we will give you the opportunity to participate. These are helpful just to kind of gauge where people are at, and also to give Kelsey an opportunity to kind of know where to focus on some of her discussion points. So participating is obviously encouraged. Throughout the presentation as well, there'll be references maybe to tools or to different resources in which we'll try to link them both in Twitter and also within webinar, GoToWebinar. So if we miss something, just ask us and we'll make sure we get it in there. At the very end, we're going to do a really quick survey. It's only going to take like 5 minutes or less. We try to make it very painless, but it's really helpful to us in order to improve the webinars from month to month and week to week. So if you could take a moment at the end and just give us a couple more minutes of your time and fill that out. The entire webinar, all the questions, all the communication slides, everything will be put into a recap post, which will be posted on Search Engine Journal shortly after it's completed. I don't think it's the same day, but it's within the next day or so, so it's pretty quick. Without any further ado, I'll let you dive into your presentation, Kelsey.
Thanks, Brent. So I just want to give a brief overview of what you're going to learn today. So some of the most effective ways to target audiences, what works best for specific campaigns, including real examples, how to interact with influencers, and how to use the time limits of Snapchat to your advantage. So I want to give a couple stats. So recently it was Snapchat's 5th anniversary, so it's only been around for 5 years, which is probably middle age for a social media platform as of right now. It has 100 million daily active users, so a third, well, a little less than a third of the U.S. population, the equivalent, is using Snapchat daily. 60% of those daily users contribute daily content, so they're not only viewing things, they're contributing things. And then 30% use it regularly, meaning if not daily, at least every other day. Snapchat is also huge when it comes to video. There's 10 billion daily video views combined. So content users generated, the discovery channels, brand channels, 10 billion daily video views. So it's huge. So to kind of kick it off, Brent, I want to give it back to you for our poll question, our first one.
Awesome. First poll question. Love these slides, by the way. Very Halloween-like. Get me all
Yeah.
excited. If it wasn't for this massive hurricane about to hit me, I'd be a little more excited, but nonetheless. First question. Oh, yeah, hold on one second. I have the poll option to let you guys actually participate, which I think we would like to do, so I'll launch that up. Do you currently use Snapchat? Pretty simple. Yes for marketing, yes on a personal level, yes for both, or no, but not planning on it. Is that planning on it or not planning on it? Oh, planning
Planning
on it. Sorry. But so the last one is no, but planning on it. Apparently, I can't read well.
on.
So yes or no, and then yes, how are you using it? Essentially. So we'll give it a couple more seconds. We've got a good response right now on the votes, but just give the last couple stragglers in. And it looks pretty split. This is interesting. All right, let me close it and show it so that people can see what I see. Yes, on a personal level, which I think to me kind of makes sense, but
Yeah.
I'm actually very interested in seeing how that changes after this presentation because I'm actually going into this when I went into the preview of this presentation. This is what I went in as well, and I came out with a lot more ideas professionally, so I'm excited to see how people kind of change after this. So give it back to you.
Thank you. Okay, let's pull this. Do you guys, Brent, do you just see the poll
Yep,
question
see it.
screen? Okay. So I actually took a screenshot of the results and I'm going to share that on Twitter because it's super interesting. I figured a lot of people were using it for personal, but they were interested in seeing how to use it for business. So hopefully today I can help with that. So I'm going to go over a quick couple basics before adding some more personalized examples. So the basics, you want to be silly and fun. So the one way I think of it as Snapchat is the complete opposite of LinkedIn, where LinkedIn you're usually more professional. You can also share your Snapchat profile on your larger social network. So the main way people are doing this is to share your Snap code, which is under your profile. So that little ghost icon that you see in the screenshot, that's my Snap code. It's basically a QR code that people can scan to then add your profile to Snapchat. I'm not the world's hugest fan of QR codes, but it seems to be working well. I've seen people change their Facebook profile photo, page photo, or their Twitter photo to their Snapchat code for a while to kind of get followers. So that's just a little freebie there. That's something small you can do to get the word out that you're on Snapchat. So why do people use Snapchat? Well, 35%, which was the majority answer in this poll, use it specifically because their content disappears. So your Snap Stories, which is a public story timeline, like something you post on Instagram that anyone can see when they add you, that is only available 24 hours from for 24 hours from when you post it to 24 hours from then. So people like that. They like that it disappears. If you're sending snaps to individual users, they can only review it one other time, and then you set a time limit. So if you see on this selfie snap I took, the bottom left-hand corner, it has a timer that I can set anywhere from 1 second to 10 seconds, and it's gone after the user has viewed it for 10 seconds and then views it again. So they can't view my snaps after that I send to them. Snap Stories, again, which are public they can view those as many times as they want within 24 hours. I recommend that marketers and brands capitalize on this by offering info that your followers aren't going to find anywhere else. So, you know, promo codes, special sales, special new products that you're doing a flash sale on or you're offering for free for a limited time. That is going to drive the interest and the FOMO factor of Snapchat. And then finally, people love using Snapchat because it's fun. So filters change daily. Filters are just effects you can add to your photos. So the example on the right here is a Snapchat filter of me, obviously. So to kind of kick things off and show you guys a fun way to use Snapchat, I wanted to share one of my best Snapchat stories that actually had the highest engagement for me. So there was a Snapchat filter that kind of makes you look like, I don't know, a drag queen or, you know, someone who loves makeup. And so I love this filter because it's so ridiculous. So I decided to do a whole story, which again is public to all my followers, of me going to Walmart with my face on. So I curled my hair and I'm ready for Walmart. I had to stop at Sonic first, which is a drive-in fast food place in the Midwest, if you guys have never heard of Sonic. So I had to stop first to get a drink, of course, with my full face on. And then did I need any mixers? Not this trip. I had to ask where the vinegar was, which I really did in real life, and it was kind of awkward to take Snapchats in the middle of shelves, but really fun to see the results. It's just so fun to see your photos manipulated, and that's one cool thing about Snapchat is it's making people really comfortable with AR, augmented reality, which is basically what the filters are. It's adding, you know, digital effects to real time. And so Snapchat is really the leader in that if you think about it. I had to check out the meatless options. Did I need any veggie burgers? And then finally, I checked out and I was ready to go. So this Snapchat story works so well because, again, it's the opposite of LinkedIn. It harnessed the core features of Snapchat, so the filter that was only available for that day and that the story was only there for 24 hours. So if somebody wanted to view it again, they only had a day to view it and then it was gone. And it also showed a personal glimpse into my daily life. So I wouldn't consider myself, you know, a high-level Snapchat star or anything, but for people that are like the Snapchat celebrities or Vine celebrities, people want to know what you're doing in your personal life, and that can come across, that can help brands as well, which I'm going to get into later. People kind of want to know behind the curtain, like what you're doing when you're not on your other social media channels or not publishing things on your website. So let's move into some more applicable ways to use Snapchat and recommendations. So first, I want to recommend that you snap daily because the content disappears every 24 hours. That's going to make users look forward to your content. Like I mentioned earlier, 60% are contributing content every day, and then 100 million people are logging on daily to use Snapchat. So people look daily and see what the users are following, what they posted in their story. So even just spending 20 minutes a day, which I'm going to talk about later, can really make a huge difference for your Snapchat strategy. One thing that I like to think about whenever I'm helping brands with Snapchat is what your main points are that you want to get across, and this is what you should be snapping about. So even though, you know, you can snap about like a new copier your office got or a book you're reading, if that doesn't relate to what you want your users to think about you or think of you as, or isn't pushing your key things that you want to be known about, then you probably shouldn't be snapping about it, because you want to make sure that it's applying to what your core message is and what your target audience is looking for. And so if you want to see a good influencer example, the Kardashians do an amazing job of this. So I know they have a lot of haters, but I actually am amazed by the Kardashians that they've been able to build such a huge empire. So you can follow all of them on Snapchat with Kim Kardashian, just her name with no space, and you can see how she lets users into her personal life while also promoting her husband's like fashion line, the phone cases she does. I know that might not apply if you're not in e-commerce, but you can kind of see how she weaves it in naturally. So it's not only just a photo of the phone case, it's her explaining what they are, which I think is a good applicable process and practice for any brand using Snapchat. People want to see you engaging with what you're talking about, not just showing it, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of cool ways that you can use available content on Snapchat to run campaigns. So one of my favorite ways that I see a lot of brands doing is republishing and reposting content that they've created on Snapchat. So you can save the videos, images, and stories that you've been creating on Snapchat and reshare them on other social networks. There's a little download button, which is a downward facing caret when you tap on the story screen or on your images, and that allows you to download those images, entire stories, and videos as well. So one thing that works really well is if you create a cool filter like I've been doing, or if you have a video that you shared with a caption, you can save those and then republish them on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere where you're sharing visual content. So a good example of this, with which Danielle is going to put a link in the chat, is Red Bull. So they do a lot, they're really well known for their extreme athletes and extreme stunts that they sponsor. So they've been doing this a lot with their Snapchat campaign. So they will share footage on their Snapchat channel of some extreme sports being done, and then reshare that on YouTube to kind of grow their YouTube channel. So that's a cool example. Besides republishing, another thing you can take advantage of are geo-filtered and sponsored filters. So filters, like I said, are the effects that are overlaid people's images. And so if you see on the right, that's an example. So I was preparing this presentation, and a geo-filter is based on your location. So in this instance, I live in Olathe, which is a suburb of Kansas City, and so Olathe has a few filters that just people in the community contributed. You can also sponsor geo-filters. So a perfect example would be SCJ Summit. We're going to sponsor a filter for SCJ Summit New York on November 2nd. So the location of the conference, we're going to, anyone that's in that location, they can use our geo filter. So it'll say SCJ Summit, New York City, and then people can share snaps with that filter. We're going to also repurpose that again by downloading the images, having people send them to us so we can share on our other social media. You can also do sponsored filters. So the effect, like I showed in a previous slide, like the drag queen example, you can create your own sponsored filters. So I didn't want to use any of the brand's screenshots since I didn't take those, but an example which Danielle's going to share in the chat is Taco Bell. So they did a crazy sponsored filter for Cinco de Mayo, where basically your face was turned into a taco and you just saw your eyes and your mouth. And so that was actually Snapchat's most popular sponsored filter of all time ever. It got 225 million views in the day that it was live. And it's super ridiculous, but it worked so well for Taco Bell because they are well known for really engaging millennials and really knowing their target brand, and that was spot on. So that's a good example of a sponsored filter if you want to learn about that. Now, sponsored filters for all of Snapchat are pretty expensive. If you're a smaller brand or have a smaller budget, I would stick with geo filters. Maybe you could do a geo filter for a community event or a conference that you're going to be active in, an expo, for maybe your office building if you're going to have people in that day. Those are good ways to use geo filters if you're a smaller business. If you're a local business, I would definitely use them regularly for any promotions you're running, any community events, things like that. It's a great way to use that, and pretty affordable depending on what area. The bigger the area, the bigger the cost, and of course the duration as well. With geo filters too, the sponsored ones, you can set it for longer than a day for the filter to run. So if you were at a conference for 3 days, you could run a sponsored geo filter for those 3 days. And then finally, influencer channel takeovers. So if you work with influencers for your brand, you could have them take over your Snapchat channel for the day. So basically what they do is they would promote on their channel, hey, I'm taking over Vogue Magazine's Snapchat channel for the day. Check me out at, and then give your channel name. And so the reason why that works is because they already have an established audience on their own Snapchat and their own social media following, and hopefully those people will join you there. A good example of that, which Danielle's going to put in the chat, is Unilever. So they partnered with a Vine influencer for one of their frozen dessert products for a Snapchat takeover. So it was actually an influencer from Vine that they then brought over to their Snapchat channel, and it got over 500 million views, and they were able to directly link it to a higher ROI when it comes to sales. So they actually saw a bump in sales for that specific chocolate product because of this Vine influencer campaign. So again, that link has more information that Danielle shared in the chat. So a couple other ways that are free that you can do are contests to grow engagement and followership. So you can have that user-generated content and have them ask people to either send you snaps. So you can set it on your user settings that people can send you snaps at any time, which I would recommend as a brand channel. And then you could say, hey, send us a snap. So for instance, I did this snap of my dog Mac, who I love. He just got groomed, so his ears were like super had a lot of volume. So, you know, that would be an example of a funny snap I could send into a dog brand, or Maybelline, since I mentioned them. You know, that would be an example of something that you could ask people to send you. You know, send us photos of your dog being glamorous, or, you know, something that ties into your brand. Another way you can grow engagement on Snapchat is to ask personalized questions in your snaps. So, you know, snap us a photo of where you play Pokemon Go in Detroit, if you're a business that is in Detroit and want to grow your Detroit audience. And then if people send you that, you can screenshot snaps that people send you and then republish them. Just make sure that you get the user's permission through the chat feature. You could also ask them one thing that John Lee Dumas, who runs the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, one of the most popular podcasts of all time, he has a daily quote that he shares on his Snapchat, and then he asks people what their thoughts on it are. And he also the other day asked people what their favorite business books are, because he's in entrepreneurship. And so I shared mine, and he responded with an emoji, which we're going to talk about later. But it's just really fast to like ask people for feedback and then interact with them in real time instantly. One thing with chat as well is those chats, the text chats, erase after somebody's seen it. So make sure that you, if you're asking for permission to use images, you take screenshots of snaps and let the user know that you're going to be doing that. So that being said, let's move on to our last poll question, Brent.
Awesome. Let me just pull it up so everybody can see it. Last poll question. In your opinion, what is the most appealing aspect of Snapchat? 1, the engagement with the user base. 2, the filters. 3, content, IG, example, discovery channels from publishers. Impairments?
Impermanence. I should have. Sorry, I'm an English major. I was too fancy.
Yeah, that was a little over my head. I'm not an English major, so I don't even know what that means, but it's probably something important. So one of the 4, the 3 that you can understand are the one that you can't. And we have only about half the people voting, so come on, just throw your vote in there. Don't worry about the last one.
It's being temporary. That's what impermanence means. It means it's fleeting.
Probably everybody knows that but me, but when it comes to you know, English, it's my second language. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close it up and share the results. And over half engagement with user base, which makes sense. I mean, if you're looking at, you know, what you're using most of these social tools today from a marketing standpoint, you're looking some sort of ROI, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just growing the user base to be able to interact with them for sure.
Although I will say the only reason I use Snapchat right now is for the filters. The dog licking thing like became like just something everybody, my kids were like, hey, can we send a picture? I'm like, no, I gotta download this app, you know. Yeah, so interesting. And you're back.
Okay. Am I back on the right slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty. That's really cool. Thanks, guys, for answering. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to engage, which I'm actually talking about next. So let's move on here. So, like I said, you can allow users to chat with you. It's just a setting in your profile. So there is some spam that you get, especially if you are using one person as kind of the voice of your Snapchat, or if you're a brand influencer, you might get some creepy snaps and creepy text messages, especially if you're a woman, unfortunately. Um, but I will say that those are pretty few and far between, especially for brand channels. So it is worth it to have that open channel, because then people can ask you anything. So you want to be prepared and have a strategy for how you're going to answer things. I have seen people actually ask for customer service help on Snapchat. So even though, again, the chat erases, you want to make sure that when you're in the window you get their info and you can refer them to the right channel. Another thing that's really cool is to engage with fans' profiles. So on the screen is just a list of people that I follow in their public stories. If you swipe right, then I can chat with them or send them a snap back. So if you're following some of your target audiences on Snapchat, you can just swipe right and send a snap back to them. You can also reply as a chat on their stories. You swipe up when it's showing the story on the screen and you can respond. That's a really cool way to stay engaged with your audience members, just so you stay top of mind. So they know that you care. Like, how cool would it be if Taco Bell chatted, and responded to one of your snaps? It'd be awesome. So even 20 minutes a day, like I said before, makes a huge difference. So, that begs the question, what can you do in 20 minutes a day? Here's what I know that you can easily do in 20 minutes a day. Like I said, watch the stories of users you follow and respond without selling. So emojis recommended, like the John Lee Dumas example. Even just responding with a heads up, or if somebody's sharing a dress that they bought from your boutique, even responding with like the fire emoji or like the 100% emoji, because millennials and high schoolers are the fastest growing and biggest audience segment of Snapchat. They freaking love emojis, so be sure to do it. And you want to make sure that you have the right voice and that's in line with your brand, right? So for instance, if I don't know, if Wells Fargo, which they're probably not the right example right now since they kind of have a controversy with stuff, but if they didn't have any type of millennial customer portal at all, and then they got on Snapchat and were trying to like respond to things with emojis, it just wouldn't fit their brand. So you want to make sure that that kind of casual response and the way you respond does fit your brand. You can be a serious business on Snapchat, but you need to respond and make sure that it follows your brand's voice that is consistent across all your online presence and in your stores and offices as well. You can also, in 20 minutes a day, add 1 to 4 snaps to your brand story. So um, one thing you could do that's maybe outside of the 20 minutes is have an editorial calendar for Snapchat. So if you have an event coming up, you need to assign who's going to cover it on Snapchat, and then when that day comes, in your 20 minutes, you could add the snaps to your brand story just to make sure it's consistent. Planning ahead what you're going to share really makes it easy, especially because Snapchat moves so quickly, and you want to, when you're building a story of several different images that go together, you want to make sure that they're all shared within a reasonable window. So for instance, let's say I created a snap and I said, stay tuned for the next snap for a promo code, and then I didn't add the next snap for like 30 minutes. That is not going to work. People are going to lose interest. You want to make sure when you have snaps that are part of a cohesive story that they're being shared within minutes of each other, because people like to look at stories all together, especially if they go together. And then finally, in 20 minutes, you can also look for new users to follow. So Danielle, I didn't tell you this ahead of time, so I'm sorry, but if you could share my article on Snapchat directories that's on SEJ, I list out a lot of directories that you can search by keyword of users that might be good for your brand to follow, and then you can also add your brand on these directories as well. And I found that that's a pretty good way to get followers. Just to kind of grow that up a little bit, you want to make sure that you include applicable hashtags so people know what you're going to be snapping about. Try to make it not too broad, because you want to fight that urge to just have as many followers as possible. You want to make sure that your followers are going to be people that are actually interested in what you have to say. So let's move on. So what should you be measuring? Brent had really good feedback when I went over this with him. He said, you guys and people want to know what you should be measuring on Snapchat, how to garner whether or not it's a success. So first thing is friend count, which is what Snapchat calls followers. So to see that grow is always a good thing, even though it doesn't really always tie into direct sales. Another good thing that you can measure is link and promo code conversion. So you can't create clickable links on Snaps, but you can share links in chat. But if you want to share links in on Snaps, like on an image that you or a video that you share, I would recommend using a shortened bit.ly link that's really easy to remember. So for instance, if I was promoting SCJ Summit, a bit.ly link that would make sense would be you know, bit.ly/SCJNYC. That would be so easy for people to remember that then they can type into their browser after they view your Snap. Another thing that you can, and with the links, you want to make sure that they're directly unique to Snapchat. So you know, okay, 100 people from Snapchat followed this link. The same goes for promo codes. If you have a sale or a promotion going on, make sure you create a promo code that's especially for, so, you know, SCJ NYC, which I used for SCJ Summit for this webinar, that's specifically only for this webinar. So we know that if we have any conversions, it's for this webinar. The same thing goes with Snapchat. And make it really easy to remember too. Maybe just the product name, Snap. If I was doing something for Under Armour, I could do UA Snapchat. You know, something really easy for people to remember. And that's going to be another way you can directly measure sales. Another thing that people like to look at when it comes to Snapchat is how many views your snaps are getting on your stories, which again are the public stream. So those metrics disappear after your story does. So you can't access them after your 24 hours are up. So make sure that you are regularly looking, you know, maybe towards the end of the 24 hours, how many views your snaps got. You can also look at completion rate. So if you have a cohesive story that goes together, you can look at the completion rate percentage, how many people actually viewed all your images versus just skipping through. And that's something that we don't have good averages on yet since Snapchat's pretty new. So I can't tell you guys, you know, what a good average conversion rate is or what a good completion rate is for Snapchat because it's so new. You know, brands are just now starting to use it. And Danielle, also thank you Danielle, she shared an article that's a good case study on how to get how a certain brand used his small business client to get a positive ROI on Snapchat. So if you want to learn exactly how one person did it, that's a good article to look at. So to kind of wrap it up, key takeaways. So here's a screenshot of a sponsored filter that Frosted Flakes did. It turned you into Tony the Tiger, which is really cute, I think. So key takeaways. Repurpose your content. Save your snaps and republish them, especially since they disappear after 24 hours. Post and engage daily. You know, people love that daily impermanence or temporariness of Snapchat. Work with influencers that are really active on social media for channel takeovers, or have them share your content on their channel. You know, send them boxes of your products to review with their approval, things like that, and make sure that that they include that it was a sponsored takeover, because Snapchat still falls under FTC guidelines. And then finally, use the time limits to your advantage. So have flash sales with, you know, temporary promo codes, things like that. Make sure that you're harnessing the FOMO effect, so people will take advantage of your offers immediately. So thank you. If you guys have any questions, there's my email. And then, like I mentioned before, if you guys want a copy of my Snapchat ebook, I'd be happy to send it to you in a PDF for free. Just email me, kelsey@searchenginejournal.com, and I'll send that to you guys. So, and then there's my Snapchat if you're going to follow me, Instagram and Twitter. I'd love to answer any questions that we might not get to.
Awesome job, Kelsey. Really, really good.
Hey.
So there's quite a few things in there. We've got quite a few questions that have started to come in. Obviously, people want to figure out some of the finer details and get more into Snapchat in general. Before we jump into that, just want to give a quick reference to our next webinar that's coming up. We have Holly Miller from Searchmetrics, who's going to be talking about what's new in universal search, and that should be really exciting. It's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on October 19th, so mark your calendars. Searchmetrics, I had the chance to sit with Marcus Tober in Munich at Oktoberfest and talk to him a little bit and get some glimpses into some of the stuff that they're doing with Searchmetrics. And as a tool, they've launched a lot of new features. One today, they have a lot of new insights, a lot of new data, and so I'm sure she'll be coming with a lot of that information. So I would definitely make sure to attend and not miss that. We're going to go into some Q&A just so that everybody knows. Again, we are utilizing the question box within GoToWebinar, and we're also utilizing the hashtag SEJ Think Tank. So if you're on Twitter, you have a question, or if you're in the webinar system, go ahead and throw it in there. Either way, we'll continue to answer your questions and kind of run through these as we go. First question, actually some of these questions have had me learn a few things. First question was, kind of a statement question, but it was referencing to Snapchat's code, QR code, and the references to the names and some of the other things there. He was asking, what do they refer to as the QR code for Snapchat as far as Boo code? It was the question.
That I wish it was Boo Code because that is a way more clever name. It's actually, the official name is Snapcode.
Snapcode, and it's I think they call it Boo Code. I did a little research. We did a little research just to kind of verify this, just so people don't think I'm a Snapchat scholar. But it turns out that they call it Boo R, and the reason that Boo is associated with Snapchat is because Snapchat's logo is actually Ghostface Chilla, which is based on Ghostface Killer from the Wu-Tang Clan,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to represent there then gone. And so that was what the premise of Snapchat was about, there then gone, which is, Ghostface Killa, which then became Ghostface Chilla, which their QR code is sometimes referred to as the Booer. Instead of QR, it's Booar. Booar.
Got it. That's what happens when you let college kids create billion-dollar companies. You get awesome little things like that
Yeah,
make it
little
fun.
hidden gems, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I have found that most people have no idea how to use Booars, snap codes. Any tips for how to, I guess the question would be any tips for how to use them in marketing and also how to make sure that people understand how to use them, or maybe explain how they're used as well.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, you could temporarily use it as your profile photo on other social media networks. If you have printed out things, like if you have flyers at conferences or agendas, you could print it out and share it there. I've also seen people, like if you were at an expo booth or meeting a lot of people, somebody could display the the snap code on their screen, and then the other person could use their phone and scan it. So that's another thing that I've seen people do. Another thing that, if you're in the same proximity as somebody who wants to add you on Snapchat, in that same filter or same view where you view your Boo code, you can say share nearby, and if the other person does it too, it makes your profiles visible so you guys can add each other. So that's another cool thing you can do. Like if you have a local store, or if you're at an expo booth, I keep thinking about expo booths because we're going to PubCon next week. That's another cool way to add people. QR codes, any way you could use a QR code, you could probably use your snap code. You just have to make sure that it's useful to the user. So for instance, adding it to, say, your email signature, that probably nobody's going to use it from there. You want to make it so it's easy for people to actually scan it and where they're actually going to see it.
And
So
you have to scan it from within the phone projecting on something. So even if you get it on a
exactly.
mobile page, you can't necessarily scan it, it's not going to work that way.
Exactly, which is the problem with QR codes. So
Right.
one thing that I don't usually share my QR code. What I do is in the settings field where you see your QR code, there's also a little share button, and it automatically generates your Snapchat URL, your profile URL. So there's no Snapchat website like Instagram where you can view someone's profile yet. I don't know if there ever will be, but they do have URLs, and if somebody clicks on that from their mobile phone or they're logged in on their desktop, it will show your profile and allows them to follow from that URL. I can't talk.
Interesting.
So that's something I've been doing that's been a lot more successful in my opinion than sharing a QR code, is sharing the URL to your Snapchat profile.
Where I've seen it used like very effectively is in situations where people are already utilizing their phone, right? So I've seen it in a lot of like
Exactly.
restaurants. I've seen it in a lot of restaurants. I see it in a lot of clubs. I see it in a lot of like I could imagine if you're doing like, let's say for instance you were doing a photo shoot at an event and you had the backdrop, right? And you put the QR code on there for the backdrop. So
Exactly. Yep.
things like where people already have their phone open and they're like, oh, I can quickly add this by just scanning it. Really making it kind of fluid for people to do that, I think would be something to consider.
Exactly. Good ideas.
Can you explain what exactly a story is?
So a story is basically your public feed, and everything is only visible for 24 hours. So a story is basically, you don't have to make them cohesive, but some people use them to create literally a story like I did with the Walmart example. So it's a series of images that go together, but you also don't have to do that. Your Snap story could just be images throughout the day. But remember, each one, and it's by image, not by story, each image is only available on your Snapchat story 24 hours from when you first publish it.
And there's no segmented stories or anything like that. I mean, essentially, when you're adding them for 24 hours, every picture you add to the story is just going to be strung together. So,
Exactly,
if you
exactly.
don't want to inject a photo that you're taking into that story because you have a planned story, then you would have to share it manually or you'd have to not utilize your story for that time period.
Exactly. So if I did that Walmart story, and then I also wanted to do a separate story about like that dog filter, it might make sense for me to wait, because at the end of my Walmart story, if I had created a separate storyline about the dog filter, it would have just all run together. Like you said, Brent, there's no way to segment that at all. It all just runs together, and it's published in the order you publish it, so you can't move that order either. So it's published by time. So the first snap would be the oldest snap you've published your story, and so on to the most recent.
Here's an interesting question. This is one that I'm starting to hear a lot more of lately. So Facebook has Facebook Live, and more specifically, Instagram has now added stories. So if I have Instagram and I have stories on Instagram, why do I focus on going and putting energy into Snapchat?
So Instagram stories are basically copies of Snapchat. It's basically a copy. I think one thing that Snapchat has going for it is it already has an established user base. It has those filters like we talked about, the
Mhm.
geo filters and then the augmented reality filters. As of now, Instagram doesn't have that at all. Um, those are two benefits I've seen. And also, if your user base is the biggest base of Snapchat, then it makes sense to be on Snapchat. Again, millennials to younger than millennials. And then another fast-growing segment of Snapchat as well is 35 to 45-year-olds. That age group is kind of getting onto Snapchat as well. That's kind of where it makes sense. Instagram, I would say Instagram is more artistic in a way, depending on your brand voice. So Snapchat is where you have fun, where you share promo codes, where you're crazy, it shows the fun side of your brand, maybe office events, versus I feel like Instagram is a little more planned out, and that's the feeling. You know, Snapchat, the campaigns that do so well are the ones that seem off the cuff all of a sudden. Hey, if you're not here, you're missing out. Instagram, I would say, is more planned, artistic. There's more of a, like I said, artistic value of it, if that makes sense at all.
Would you say that there is a crossover happening in Snapchat with in regard? One of the questions is, you know, how do these bigger brands do such great Snap stories? For example, BuzzFeed, People, etc., who are putting together really high quality Snap stories. You know, how are they accomplishing that? How are they doing that is the question.
Yeah, so one thing that I didn't have time to get to today are discovery channels, and so those are another segment of the public-facing I guess, news feed, for lack of a better word, of the Snapchat app, where publishers will share daily content that's curated stories that are animated, that have text like an article. So huge brands are getting on that, like Mashable, Vogue, the National Geographic, but those cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I didn't get into that today just because the segment of people that would actually want to use that and have that budget is a little bit smaller.
Is
So
there a process for that? I mean, is there like a publisher sign up, or do you literally have to contact one of their representatives and negotiate and work with them to be
yeah,
a publisher?
from what I understand, I haven't worked with any brands that have done it. It's a process. So you can go to their sales team and say you're interested, but they have to decide that it works for you to be on the platform. So right now, I think there's only like, I don't want to say 20 channels, and they're huge brands like ESPN. So that's something that if you're from a huge brand, you might want to consider. But again, as far as I know, and there's no public numbers from Snapchat, it's just kind of what people know. It's $100,000 and up
Yeah,
for a
they are currently making an initiative across cities to do a sales pitch to a lot of companies in each city. So they're making their way around for the next 3 to 4 months. My guess is they'll do this for a while. Sometime next year we'll see kind of a publisher opportunity for, you know, anybody to apply to, kind of like a verified type of account system. But for
yeah,
right now, I've seen nothing similar to you. I've seen nothing that allows you to kind of get in and do that.
yeah.
Influencers. You're looking for influencers on Snapchat. How do you find good influencers? How do you approach them? How do you get involved with them? How do you get them to work for your brand? Any ideas, any strategies, any tips?
Sure. So if you're a middle to bigger brand, you can work with influencer networks that actually will recruit them for you or already have vetted them to make sure that their audience size is what you're looking for. One that comes to mind, it's called Clever. I've worked with them occasionally as an influencer, and I've had a great experience. They're just called Clever. Danielle, I don't know if you can find their website, but they're an influencer network that's worked with a lot of different brands. Another thing that I have seen work well is using an influencer search tool. So looking for influencers that have a huge social following that share things that your company is related in, that's their target market as well. So for instance, let's say you had a fashion line of leather handbags and you could search for influencers that are sharing things about fashion. That'd be a good fit. A few places to look. BuzzSumo is a really cool content search tool that you can search by. You can find influencers that have shared content related to your keywords, and it shows how many shares that content got. That's a good place to look. I also like to look for roundup posts that are in your industry. So for instance, if you were in the cosmetic industry, you could search for 15 of the best, makeup YouTube stars or whatever, searching YouTube stars, Vine stars, influencers, celebrities, Vine celebrities, Snapchat celebrities are another keyword you can search for with your industry term. A lot of times I'll see roundup posts that have good people for me to reach out to. A lot of the most popular ones that have, 1 million followers or whatever, they have agents as well, and that's going to give be a little more of a higher cost, obviously. But working with smaller influencers to middle level, I would search by the content they share using BuzzSumo, like I said, or looking for people that have high social media followings in the audience you're wanting to target. So look on, you know, Twitter search tools like Follower Wonk by keywords, and then find people that have a huge Twitter following and maybe they're active on Snapchat as well. If they mention, you know, their Snapchat in their Instagram or Twitter profile, then you know that they have a following there. And like I mentioned, this is a long answer to your question, Brent, but like I mentioned before with Unilever with their chocolate dessert campaign, the influencer they used actually, you know, wasn't huge on Snapchat yet. He was huge on Vine. So it is possible to find influencers that have a huge following on other platforms and migrate them to your Snapchat if it works for audience size and demographics.
Awesome. Really detailed, so I don't think anybody have any questions being able to find that. But you're right. I mean, it's a process. It's a bit of a process to find the right influencer. It's not like there's really necessarily a marketplace for it out there. Uh, question. Utilizing Snapchat, it's very good for personal brands who have, you know, things to take pictures of, touchy-feely stuff. Two parts. This individual is asking, have you seen examples of news participating in Snapchat, and how are they participating? I would expand it out to also ask, are you seeing publishers outside of the publisher system? Are you seeing publishers or news agencies taking advantage of Snapchat's, you know, normal features?
Yeah, so the New York Times has a Snapchat. I think it's NY Times, I believe, and they're a good example. So what they'll do is they'll share snaps of news that as so when all of the presidential caucuses and you know, speaking events were happening, they would share snaps of live footage as it's happening of those events. Another thing that I've seen them do and a few other news networks do is they'll share conversations of news that's happened. So maybe a reporter and an expert will be in the same room together because you can't do screen share. So they have to be in the same place. They'll share a recap of what's going on as they find out about it, or maybe a recap of an event if they were at, you know, Dreamforce, which is happening this week, a huge conference in San Francisco, sharing daily recaps as a publisher that could work really well. Another thing that you could do as a publisher or to share content is utilize those bit.ly links like I said. So Search Engine Journal doesn't have a Snapchat account right now just because it's not fitting with our goals right now. But if we did, one thing we could do is have, you know, whoever wrote an article on our site, we could give them the login creds for our Snapchat, which we would change after they're done. And they could say, hey, you know, shoot a Snapchat story, add it to our story. Hey guys, I just published a complete guide to, you know, keyword research on SEJ, check it out. And then they could have a caption that had a bit.ly link to the article, so bit.ly/keyword research or whatever. That'd be a cool way to share content on Snapchat. Like I said, there's no really you know, averages for that now, but that's just some examples of ways I've seen publishers and people who want to share content using Snapchat.
So one of the other things that I think you have to consider with any social media marketing is what your overall goal is. So we're talking a lot about presenting an opportunity for a publisher or a news agency to share more of their news. I think a lot of companies right now are also looking at social as a way to humanize their companies, as a way of showing a sense of spirit and a sense of kind of the what goes on behind closed doors. So if you looked at it from that sense, I think there's a lot of opportunity to, you know, really take behind the scenes clips and pictures and videos that kind of showcase, you know, what goes on in and around the show itself could also be very effective.
Yep. Yeah, any behind the scenes, like you said, maybe the offices, you know, here's where our PPC team is if you're in marketing, you know, company picnics, if you have company awards nights, if it's somebody's birthday, That's kind of fun, not all the time, but to mix it in. People love that on Snapchat because, like I said, it's kind of showing behind the curtain, giving people an insider look that you aren't sharing with anyone else.
My company is a training provider that specializes in training individuals who want to become personal trainers. What would be the best way to utilize Snapchat? Or maybe it is not relevant for our market? Question mark.
Yeah, really good question. So you want to target the people, your target audience. So if I understand it correctly, that's people who want to be personal trainers. So the natural route I would take is a fitness view of it. So maybe you could have some people that have worked with you and gotten their certification. They could do a workout of the day. They could do a Snapchat story that has, you know, 5 workout moves, and then you could put the length as a caption. So if I was doing diamond push-ups, you could show someone doing it. And again, videos, I forgot to mention, can only be up to 10 seconds long. So it is kind of abbreviated, but you could show someone doing some diamond push-ups and then say do 5 rounds for a goal of how many minutes. You could do daily workouts that tie in really cool to your target audience because that's obviously what they're interested in. I've also seen people do healthy recipes. So you kind of could do a process of making, I don't know, a berry banana protein smoothie. And then you could say, find this recipe at bit.ly/ you know, banana smoothie or whatever, because people that are interested in being personal trainers and being in that industry are also going to be interested in healthy eating. You could also share snaps from any events you do, like if you do create not recruiting events or expos where you're sharing your company. If you do training, like if you do in-person certification, it'd be really cool to share snap stories of that day, the training day as well. So there's a lot of cool things you could do.
So
When you don't know what to think about what your audience's interests are and create content around that.
yeah, and I would even say in that specific space, like a lot of times if you look at the path of an individual making that kind of professional shift, right, there's a passion in those areas. Personal trainers, typically they end up learning a lot about the body, about exercise, about theory. So I would even go into creating something that kind of latches into that higher echelon. Like I'm not just trying to get in shape, but I'm trying to perfect my motions. So it's like 7 things you're doing wrong with your push-ups, like train the
Yep.
trainer, like do a segment called train the trainer, and really say like, look, these are the real movements that make or break your planks, or these are the real
Exactly.
movements that, you know, how do you intensify a normal workout to make it fit for a trainer? These are the type of areas you'll really kind of catch in with both an audience that's looking for trainers and an audience that would want to be a trainer. So I think doing that would allow you to showcase your expertise as being, you know, special and above and beyond. So that would be a really good way with the training side.
Yeah, agreed.
How can nonprofits market their content on Snapchat? I'm guessing that means outside of all the normal tactics that we're talking about, is there something specific to nonprofits that you think you've seen or would recommend?
So you can
And
share
actually, you're going to have to do
content.
that one quick, by the way. I'm sorry. I let a
Okay.
question slip in a little late, and I'm out of time. So.
You can share content like I gave in the New York Times publisher example. I think for nonprofits specifically, donors want to see where their money's going to. So our social producer, Caitlin Rulin, she has a nonprofit called Squalor to Scholar, and it's for providing education in India to children that might have not been able to go to school otherwise. The next time she goes to India to see the school and her kids, she could have a Snapchat story of the kids. They're going to school. Here's where your dollars are going. So maybe it's not with people, maybe it's products like school supplies for these kids, or you know, donations, food donations if you run a food bank. Show all the food that people brought in from your drive, or all, so you know, you could say with our 90-day drive we were able to bring in, you know, 50 pallets of food, and show the food. People love seeing their donations and their work and their efforts seeing the physical manifestations of that, whether it's the people they're helping or what their money is going towards.
Absolutely, great answer. I really like that. Focusing on what people see, kind of, their efforts going towards is really effective, in my opinion as well. That's all the time we have for QA within the GoToMeeting webinar system. I am going to make sure that Kelsey gets all of these questions. She's going to hopefully have some time to continue to answer these in Twitter, and also we'll make sure that they get into the blog post recap of all of the presentation. Again, there will be a QA for a couple minutes. If you have the time, we'd really appreciate you taking the time to fill it out. And thank you, Kelsey, again, for all the great information. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Brent.
All right, everybody, until next time, thank you for joining. Bye.
Bye.